Witam wszystkich bardzo serdecznie. Dziś naszym gościem jest Bo Becking, wybitny oceaniczny żeglarz regatowy, ośmiokrotny uczestnik regat Whitbread i Volvo Ocean Race, który za kilka dni będzie skiperem polskiej załogi jachtu Sailing Poland w regatach The Ocean Race Europe. Hi Buwe, this is an honor to have you with us, portal noweżagle.pl and our readers and viewers. This is also great news that you cooperate with one of very few Polish offshore racing teams, Sailing Poland. How did it happen that you jumped on a Polish yacht to race together with Polish sailors?
Yes, good evening, Dominic. Nice to see you. Yeah, of course, it's always one of these things. How do you connect with a Polish team? Because probably people think I'm living in Denmark and sailing on a lot of boats internationally. But I think it's one of the really nice things with being sailors. We connect always, and it doesn't matter which nationality. And actually, last year, or it's not 2 years ago, because last year I hardly did sail. But I met the Sailing Poland people in St. Maarten, where we did an event with a couple of other Volvo 65s. And we just started chatting and exchanged some emails, and said, if you need some help sometimes, just give me a buzz. And then actually last year in the beginning of September, I think it was, they gave me a call and asked me, you're interested to do some sailing with us and help coaching our youngsters, because there's a lot of young, really talented sailors on board, but they just need a little bit of guidance. So that resulted in that I was actually sailing for 7-8 days together with them. And we stayed in contact. And then all of a sudden, Robert, the person who stands behind the project, he gave me a buzz and said, we've got some small sponsorship and we like to do the Ocean Race Europe, and are you interested? And of course, I was very close with Childhood, because even last year I raced for them and did some record runs with them. But Robert was first, and I think it's just one of these things. That's like how our business goes sometimes. So and as well, just say, okay, I'd like to bring a couple of other people with me, because I think it's not only good for the project, but I think especially for the sailors, because I can learn a lot of things, but there's other sailors as well, where the younger sailors here in Poland can learn a hell of a lot from. And that's basically how we came to an agreement, and I'm here and very really happy, because it is a challenge. I can promise you that.
That's perfect and really great to have you here. But you had opportunity before to sail with Polish sailors. In the past, you have competed a few times with and against Polish sailors, for example, in One-Ton Cup Regatta and Admiral's Cup event with the crews of Roman Paszke and Karol Jabłoński. Do you think we have good offshore sailors here in Poland?
Yeah, I think in that sense, I just tell a little bit of the history, because I was racing in 1986 on a German Admiral's Cup boat, and then actually Roman Paszke came with his own built boat. He came racing in Flensburg, and I could just see that they were struggling. We remember how the old times, but they didn't have anything. So I had so much spares, because even in these days, we were changing things, and they probably still were running cotton halyards and cotton sails nearly. But so I gave him a lot of items which I didn't use anymore, and got in contact with them. And then he got the MK Cafe campaign going. I actually raced with Karol a couple of times also on a German boat. So, but I think that there is a lot of really good sailors. I think you won yourself as well. So, but it's of course, it's always having the connections. It's getting the connections, and maybe the Polish people are a little bit shy in a way. I think you really hard workers, and really just in a way I can't really, but I think it's shy in a way, not trying to get in connection. But I think what I've seen, there is a great future ahead of Polish sailing in general.
Thank you for these really nice words. But looks like for some reason we failed to create a good offshore team, you know, that could successfully race in Volvo Ocean Race Regatta or Vendée Globe. There were some trials to do it, but unsuccessfully. Is it a matter of I don't know, gathering appropriate budget, or maybe some little organizational and management experience? Because you know, we have tradition, we have sailors, like you said, we got will to do it, but for some reason we just cannot. What can be the reason, in your opinion?
Well, of course, everybody knows there is no budget, there is no race, and that's I think one of the first things what I said to our young sailors here on board as well. I say you have to realize, why are we here? We have a fantastic owner, we have a couple of really good sponsors now, and we are here because they're setting a project like this up, and that is, I think, one of the really good things about sailing people, that they actually can understand. I don't want to talk bad about soccer players, but soccer players are completely different than sailors are. They only talk money, and they want to stand themselves in the picture, and that's it. But we just know that what pleasure we can give to sponsors or to clients, give them that experience, because it's really that they become part of the team, and it's actually fantastic to see how much you actually can do for people who are supporting us. Coming to the second point, and that is, of course, there is not a lot of experience. We have to be very honest about that. And of course, it's one of these things, because the budgets maybe have not always been there. And you need a couple of people just to give the guidelines, because I think even there are very smart people here in Poland. But still, if you haven't done a project like this, you probably don't know which buttons you have to push first before you start going to the next step. And I think that's a little bit of, that's a learning curve. So, and I think that's really the thing about Sailing Poland, probably what they've seen right. If we want to become better, we should get some expertise in from abroad and start learning from these guys. And I think that's the way. And we make a mixture, internationals and local sailors, because it's twofold. We learn partly on the management side, but then as well, we can make our young and even Olympic sailors, we can make them offshore sailors as well. And that takes time. So I think Sailing Poland has seen that very well. And that's, of course, it's a culture change, because they've been sailing for 2 years, and now all of a sudden, somebody like myself comes in and maybe does things 100 degrees different than what they've done before. But I think we can see just the progress what we were making just even in these last 2 weeks since I became involved. And that is fantastic to see, because that is just the way you want to work, and it's the way to go forward.
I remember when I jumped MK Cafe sailing team, it was right after they've been sailing with you. And I remember that they were in a really high level, and it was mostly because you and a few other guys teach them, you know, all these things about offshore regattas, and they were really depending on the knowledge which you get from you and from other, you know, top-level sailors. So right now, I really appreciate what Sailing Poland, Robert, and other guys are doing, because inviting you and inviting your friends, you know, which are going to be your crew, in my opinion, this is the best way to achieve something. But it's a lot of talking in Poland. If we can do it with the Polish sailors, you know, such a race like Volvo Ocean Race, or we cannot do it.
But I think just to clarify to the public, basically, the way how the rules are written, Poland, there can't be a full, complete Polish team. And it's really stupid, in my opinion, that they've written the rules that way, because they want to have at least 3 people who have Southern Ocean experience. And of course, there are several, well, there's actually quite a lot of Polish sailors who have been going through the Southern Ocean. but they probably have been cruising very often, and they may be already of a little bit more age. So, and it's a different thing of racing through the Southern Ocean and sailing from A to B. Nothing against sailing from A to B, because it's still a massive achievement to sail around Cape Horn. But just the way how the rules are written is not favorable for any countries who don't have any background. So they are actually forced by the rules to get a couple of foreigners who've done the race before.
Which is very smart, in my opinion.
In a way, it's very smart, because it brings a lot of safety, and it can expand sailing in general. So more countries who are willing to participate in the ocean race, they can get more knowledge. But still, it's still a difficult thing, I think, to sell it to, as well, even to local sponsors sometimes. Did you say international team? But on the other hand, we know as well that the world is getting very international. So it's as well like Poland, I think, is doing it fantastic economically compared to a lot of other countries. So that opens doors as well.
Okay, there is a little problem with my connection. Thank you, Boe. So tell us, please, if the crew of the boat is 8 people, let's say, what do you think to be successful, or at least to have a chance to be successful? How many of this crew should be already experienced sailors, and how many of them can be fresh people, fresh to the southern, southern ocean racing, and no experience in around the world race?
Well, that's of course, and that's the really nice thing. We have a very big pool of actually very young sailors. I think the average age is probably 18. I think it's not much older, wow. which of course is fantastic. But just to put it a little bit in perspective, I did my first round the world race when I was 21, and that is just one of these things. You're putting a lot aside, and I remember the first time I went in the Southern Ocean, and my skipper said to me, "Oh, it's all downwind, and it's sometimes a little bit cold." But there's hardly water coming over the deck. We have to remember in these old days, the boats were not going that fast. But I got frostbite in my first round the world race. When we sailed from Cape Town to Auckland, my feet was frozen. So cold it was, because we were going so far south. There were icebergs, and I think we sailed 2 weeks in dense fog. So even for the youngsters who go out there, I think it's like they're very open-minded. They just go down there. And once you've been down there, then the fantastic sailing stays with you. But the cold is one of the things that you will never forget. And you actually hate it sometimes, because you're having moments in your life that you say, why in the hell am I sitting over here and doing this? This is my profession. That's one thing, of course. But it's still, we love sailing. But sometimes, and that's of course, that's always, because every team, and it doesn't matter which team it is, they're all going through these dips. And then it's a matter, of course, especially for guys like myself, who've been there a lot of other times, just to try to put the focus on other things and say, look how fantastic it is. The albatross is flying around, massive waves. We're doing 15, 20, 25 knots, doing over 500 miles in 24 hours. Just enjoy it, and that is. I think that's one of the things. What will be with the youngsters, because they will have a miserable time. They don't know what they're getting into. But then the good thing about human beings is just you forget about it. It's so the bad things you forget quickly, and the good things stay in your memory.
Okay, so how many people on board must be with experience, and how many of them can be without?
Well, I think by the time when you're actually starting the ocean race, I think even the people who we're having now in our team, so if you're coming to the start line, that's of course that's the other thing. But I think like by the time when you're setting up the program, and that's of course our aim, we want to do the ocean race, but so it's a matter of sailing a lot of miles and going across the Atlantic, and of course if the more miles you can do. They are, by the time when the race will start next year in October, they will be really experienced. And of course they still, and because they're young, so they still learn every time, and especially like being under pressure for leg after leg and sailing in really tight competition, because that's of course still, you know that, you can be a world champion when you're practicing, but once you start sailing against so that is, of course, that comes as a shock to a lot of people. But it is just, I think that's one of the biggest challenges, just to really compete against each other on that level.
Great to hear. So Sailing Poland is doing a great job with the organization, preparation, and I'm just, still afraid of this experience of the offshore racing, but you said that they're gonna gain it, and I'm very, very happy, because I think it's very important to have chance of course not to win the race, because for that you need probably you need to take part to 2 or 3 times to win the race. But to finish the race, this is very important here, and good to hear that they're gonna.
Yeah, but I don't agree with you on that, because I think that's one of the things, and I know in your heart as well, because you're a competitor as well, and that's the good thing about the Volvo 65. What we have, it all comes down to the people, and of course, if there is experience, it's still they will probably they will be better in the beginning. But it's a matter of picking up and becoming better. And I think that's really the good thing when you have a young, eager team, even with Olympic backgrounds, because they just know you have to go into the perfection. And I think it was one of the reasons in the last race with Team Renault, probably people remember in Auckland, we were, I think, last. And from then on that moment, because we were the leg before, we were already feeling quite confident. But there's sometimes how sailing goes. We parked up and everybody sailed around us. We know that can happen, but we started building as a team, and we became better and better and better, and we were just refining. And that is, of course, that is the thing where really, like Olympic sailors, America's Cup sailors. Of course, you don't have that many America's Cup sailors here in Poland, but you have a lot of Olympic sailors, and they just know as well, you have to keep developing, you have to get better. And when you're getting that mentality in your team, then I think the Polish team can end at the podium as well.
Yes, we got a lot of Olympic sailors here in Poland. That's not a good time to talk about it, but I'm very happy to have them. But for sure, when they jump into the offshore racing boat, they have to change. What in your opinion they have to really take care about to become good crew of the competitive team for the ocean racing?
Well, I think the most important thing is that they learn to communicate, and of course that's it's very easy said and maybe sounds a bit popular, but once you start sailing with 8 or 10 people plus a shore crew plus a management, if there's no communication, you won't get anywhere in the ocean race, and even in a big team, and that's of course and that's we know. They either have been sailing single-handed in the dinghies or with max 2 people in the Olympic classes. So then it's very easier, because you have maybe you have 2 people in the boat, and you have your coach, and you might have somebody doing massage or physio, something like that. But that's the team, and it really comes down on themselves. Of course, there's a bit of politics very often still with sailing associations involved as well. But then very often the coach is taking that part over, and the sailors can just go sailing. But once you're in that environment with 8 or 10 other people and with the shore crew, then you really have to start talking with each other, because that's the only way to make the team better. What I always said, you have to get the maximum out of each individual. And the only thing how you can achieve that is when you really start building that team. And that is you see that very often with Olympians. That is a hard nut to crack.
Yeah, especially that our Olympic sailing is based mostly on the single-handed boats, which is I think even more difficult after such a sailing in a single-handed boat to jump on a boat where you have to be a team. Okay, so did you have a chance to sail with these young people already? A few days, few hours in sailing Poland on the boat?
Yeah, we had 3 days of sailing here in Gdynia, and it's just one of these things, and because that's I just want to explain a little, because we had a great plan, and what happened with the great plan? It got interrupted, not with COVID, because that we can deal with. I think we're having a very good protocol, but we had a container standing in Spain, and that container was supposed to come over here in the beginning of April. And everybody knows about that the Panama Canal was shut. You think, but it goes from Spain to here, the container, but it had impact on all the routes. So our container was arriving 3 weeks later than planned. Then we had to take the boat out of the water, the cradles were in there. So all of a sudden, we were just way behind the 8 ball. And then the weather was bad. We know how terribly the weather has been the last few weeks here in raining, snowing, even last week when we put the keel under. So that was a little bit of a setback, but that's what I said to all the team as well. We just have to focus. We have to get the boat in good shape, and then we have to give ourselves time. Of course, become better when we start sailing, but we will build as a team during these next couple of weeks, because we have first the prologue, and that is really the aim, to become better as a team. So that actually we're quite good prepared when we start the Ocean Race Europe.
Perfect. So in this prologue in Gdynia, you've been competing here in Gdańsk Bay in 1997, as I know, this World Championship in ILC 40. Do you remember something about this regatta? That was,
yeah, of course, because we became world champions. So that's
yes, exactly.
but yeah, I remember a lot of good things about that regatta. So first of all, just the hospitality, and I think that is just that was amazing. Just what they all organized for us, and just really welcomed. We felt really welcomed over here, and that is one of the things, because I did even, I think, for 97, even though it wasn't in Gdynia, we were in Sopot, and the people just were so enthusiastic with the events, just with the sailing in general, and. Yeah, I think it has a great ambience. And now, if you see here in Gdynia what developments have been made, I think that is fantastic. So I have very good feelings and thoughts about Poland and Gdynia in special.
Yeah, it will be even more in a very near future. Bo, thank you very much. It was a great honor to talk to you, and I think almost everyone, I guess, here in Poland really keeps fingers crossed for your project with Sailing Poland, and we really would love to see you in the Ocean Race in the next year together. I know these guys; they are really professionals from Sailing Poland. So I think there is. If someone can do it, I think it's them who can really compete in the Ocean Race. As we are keeping fingers crossed. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for your time, for the interview, and we wish all the best for you and for the whole team. We are counting days to the prologue in Gdynia and for whole Ocean Race Europe, and maybe next year the Ocean Race.
Thank you very much, and we can be in touch, because I think it will be nice to give the people actually a couple of times more updates.